Good morning and welcome to the special city council meeting for Monday, since I have it when we turn the lights on, for Tuesday, January 7th. This meeting was scheduled before the Christmas break to review the city's snow removal and our temporary measure of the modified blitz system as it's come to be known. And so we'll just call the meeting to order. Now we've got one more council member coming in, and we'll look to our community safety director to introduce the report that council has in front of them. Horacio.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heavy snowfall events in December triggered an emergency meeting between council and city administration to review the current snow removal procedure in order to make residential roads passable for emergency vehicles. So this modified snow removal procedure was implemented on temporary basis starting on December 18th until January the 7th. So we have prepared a report to council explaining the current situation and giving some information about cost, pros and cons of the different methods used in the past and the current method being implemented, and some alternatives as well. So our transportation active manager right now will be providing us more details about the report.
Mr. Beach, I'll turn your microphone on there and you guys can take it away from the center.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the long and the short of it, I guess, is everyone has seen the report that was just updated slightly yesterday to change the recommendation slightly to request that council adopt this new method of residential snow clearing until the snow melt is completed this spring, and direct administration to perform a comprehensive review of the snow removal policy prior to next winter. I don't know if you want me to go through any of the detail in the report, or...
Well, I think ultimately council's there's probably one overriding question: how to go? What are the results been?
From our perspective, it was very successful. We were able to very, very quickly, even surprised us at how quickly we were able to get through 12 subdivisions in 2 days that had not had enough service at that point to get vehicles easily through them. The way the snow had come, it was very soft and sugary. People were getting stuck. It was becoming quite unpassable. And within 2 days, with just an 18-inch windrow on the sides of each side of the road, we were able to clear those out, get things moving, and have continued to do so since that time. Gotten through the entire city in 5 or 6 days with a fair amount of equipment, as outlined here. But got through that and are now today starting our third time through some of the residential areas in order to get them down a little bit further and to expose the curb and provide for some drainage, etc., and melt in the spring and continued drivability.
Thanks, Brian. Questions for administration from council members? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just a question to Brian. You said 12 subdivisions in 2 days with the snow stopping and getting Alberta blue skies. How long would that previously taken in the old model policy way?
Well, depending on if it had been just snow, no snow during the time, probably 3 weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Rice.
I'm surprised, Brian. You said you got through the whole city. My road hasn't been done, so obviously there are parts in the city that you didn't do the whole city.
Mr. Mayor, we have done your road twice. We've been through each of the areas, and unless there was cars parked on the road, we did skip certain sections because we can't get through with the graders and the loaders. There are small windrows, and we did try to, keep them within reason just to make it drivable, and we'll continue to do that. Now, I'm not saying we got every nook and cranny, but we went through each of the subdivisions on all the roads that were accessible for us.
I see Councillor Radburn. Sorry, Councillor Radburn, your mic kind of was on and then off.
That's what I said?
There you go.
Careful, you got power.
There we go. It could be dangerous. So I have a series of questions, Brian, that I'm hopeful that the council will respect, and let me go through them because I think it gives us some useful information. If I'm going on too long, let me know, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So let's start with we made this decision because we felt, when we were told, and we agreed that we were at an emergency situation. And so this was a pilot, this was a modified plan to address impassability, right? Our emergency vehicles couldn't get there. People couldn't get out of their areas. Are we still in an emergency situation? That's my first question.
No.
Okay, so we're kind of passable throughout the city.
Yes, it's just a bit rough here and there, but yes, it's
Is that true, Rory?
possible.
No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. All right, so that's question number one. Question number two, how effective was our help desk? Did it take 2 days, 3 days to get to seniors, people who couldn't do the shoveling themselves? Like, how effective was that?
In our experience has been, Mr. Mayor, that it's been very effective. They compiled a list of requests or requirements for driveways and issues that needed to be addressed, and we were able to respond to those within hours of receiving the request. A lot of them were prioritized to be within 24 hours, and we were within a couple of hours each time on that, and so it was very effective in that way.
Okay. So we didn't have days for people that had to wait.
None that I know of, unless there was some glitch in communication.
Okay. Next up, the ice roads, or what people had to shovel. So what was kind of generally, how tall of ice roads did people have to shovel off out of their driveway so far? And when we get going on a regular rotation, what do we expect it to be like? Because I'm getting lots of feedback that it's really insurmountable task for many people to do this. Is that just because it's our first shot at it and we had a lot of snow? Once we get the routine going, what would be the task, do you think, in terms of, and would it continue to be ice all the time? Yeah, so just some indication of what we've had, and on a go-forward basis, what would would they have to be?
Mr. Mayor, what we've had is about an 18-inch windrow is what we've been striving for. Now, I'm not going to say that it was always 18 inches. It might have been slightly larger in some cases. But that's what all the operators were instructed to maintain it to. And that meant that we didn't cut all the compact. If we did this each time, and we would envision that we probably wouldn't throw quite as much equipment at it all at once, but would get through the city in, say, a 2-week period, 10, 12 days. On a normal year, the windrow would never exceed that 18 inches. If we got into the situation where we just got absolutely dumped on and got behind again, we would do the same thing probably and try to maintain that windrow down to the 18 inches and then come back through again at a later date to cut down to the pavement. But what we would envision is to continuously go through the city with this method, and in that way get the roads cleared down to as close to the pavement as we can and maintain a small windrow that's manageable for people to shovel. As for whether it would be ice or not, that is so dependent on the weather and the freeze-thaw cycles and the length of time it takes us to get there.
Okay, and one more, Mayor. Thank you. Sidewalks. Like, I really concerned about the no sidewalks. So on a go-forward basis, is the envision that every time we do this sweep, that there would be snow on sidewalks that residents would have to move? Yeah, community mobility is important to me and important to, I think, many of us. And right now, with this method, right now, there's sidewalks people are walking on roads, and I think I'm concerned about that safety. So I'm asking on a go-forward basis, will people have significant snow to move off their sidewalks so that we can get people walking off roads?
Mr. Mayor, we would have to consider all of those things. At this point, we have really just gone through and blitzed the area and whatnot. So the sidewalk issue is one that the question isn't entirely answered. There are a couple of ways that we could approach it. We could put it onto the sidewalk and leave it there and expect people to move it. We could try and push it to the back behind the sidewalk, which causes damage to landscaping and other issues because those areas of town are not used to having snow and landscaping, it seems to be a lot closer to the road there behind the sidewalks. Or we could leave it outside of the gutter. And in that case, in the spring, the driveways would all have a giant puddle of water in them because that's where it would pond as it went to try and find the catch basin. So that's a decision that has to be made. And that would be part of the discussion that we would request that we undertake over the summer to determine what the policy would end up being.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Auburn. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Brian, and just a few questions here. One thing I noticed in the public was bringing forward is after they've gone through a neighborhood, there's like 6 or 8 vehicles, or some areas worse, where there's like 1.5 feet of snow on these vehicles and they haven't moved for a month or 2 weeks. I'm wondering who could answer that one first question about, are we following the bylaw to actually start moving some of these vehicles? Because most of the people have been very good in a lot of areas, but there's actually vehicles that haven't moved. Who could answer that one, I wonder? Horacio, or is Chris here? Or?
So Councillor McLean, your question is, have we been?
Well, there's some that haven't been moved, and even after the snow clearing, they're still there and haven't been moved and been parked for a month on the road. That's the question residents have been bringing up, where they've gotten their vehicle off the road for the plows, but there's a lot of houses that aren't doing it. So who could speak to what's happening there?
So the question is, what will the city do about
Yes.
those situations? Okay.
What kind of bylaw?
We do.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to defer that one to Chris if he's here, but yeah.
Chris, you're here today. Chris Manuel is our manager of enforcement services. Chris, there's a third chair there. You might as well come down. Certainly a part of the team effort in this and helping set up the call center and bylaw working with transportation to go in advance of the cruise at the start of this. So, Chris.
Yeah, so certainly one of the things we did at the onset of this new procedure is we tried to get into the neighborhoods and get those vehicles proactively moved. Obviously, once the plows came through, the ones that hadn't moved are clearly more visible than they had been prior to, perhaps. I'd say in the last few weeks, we've been just trying to stay ahead of the snow crews, so we haven't concentrated a whole lot of effort on proactively going back to address those abandoned vehicles. We have received complaints. When we received a complaint, we'd go out and we'll issue what's called a 72-hour notice. That's where if a vehicle is considered abandoned, you put the notice on the vehicle. They have up to 72 hours to move it. After 72 hours, that vehicle can be towed. So we have a number of vehicles in that category. I believe last month we actually did about 358 of those vehicles. I expect this month it will probably be even larger than that. One of the things that leads to that is we have a lot of camp workers in town, a lot of people that work stints where they work 2 weeks, 3 weeks outside of town. And we're just trying to message to people that the public street is not the place to be parking your vehicles when you're gone for those prolonged periods of time. So we are aware of it. We do have provisions both provincially and under our bylaw to deal with it. And it's something we just have to stay on top of.
I just want to finish up with this, and thank you, Mayor Given, and then I have one more question. Chris, and I know it's kind of like you're going after someone calls, but I'm almost wondering with the new plan we may be proceeding with, that possibly there could be a new plan after subdivision is graded. The bylaw just drives in there, and it's not hard to see a vehicle that's never moved for 2 or 3 weeks and proactive.
Yeah, Councillor McLean, that's certainly one of the things we consider. We actually do have our officers all assigned to individual neighborhoods for proactive patrols of abandoned vehicles, and we typically start that beginning in September, October, November, try to get ahead of the snow season. Unfortunately, it's kind of a moving target. Sometimes, depending on our resources, we're a little more successful than others, but it is something we're definitely aware of, and we want to encourage our officers to be proactive with.
Okay, and I want to finish up. Thank you, Mayor Given. Chris, because I worked in logging camps for 10 years, and I got my vehicles off the road. So the other one I was looking at, and I was looking at different policy because I was born down east, raised in Alberta, in Cambridge, Ontario, or whatever. Down east has been doing this for a long, long time. A lot of heavy snowfall. So I think by the speed process, I'm really liking what the city's doing.
So no question there.
Nope.
Councillor McLean? Okay, thank you. Councillor Clayton.
I think a lot of my questions have been touched upon by other people. I did want to also comment in regards to Councillor Radburn's comments that safety on sidewalks is a huge issue right now. And fortunately, this time of year with a shortage of sunlight, safety of children walking to schools, etc., is a big concern. And if there was an opportunity for us to look at some revisions to the modified snow plan to include some form of sidewalk snow removal, even if it was restricted to areas close to schools or something, but that does concern me. I think that there was positive, negative aspects as we've discussed in regards to the modified plan. It was obviously a record snowfall year. People, they remember that and they forget it, and there are some things that are going to go along with that. I do think there was some inconsistencies in some of the subdivisions in regards to the modified plan. And I think that overall the blitz the first time around was effective. The second time around, the comments I'm seeing, it may not have been as thorough or as effective. I think that my question would be, is there an opportunity for us to look at this modified method with opportunities for improvement based on the amount of snowfall this year, rather than simply saying we're going to just carry it through till spring? So is there any other, rather than just take the plan as it is, does the administration have any suggestions on how to improve this modified snow removal plan? Is it old or new, basically?
Councillor Clayton, can I just
Yep.
so are you asking if does administration intend to continue to revise the way they deliver the service between now and the end of the season?
Yeah,
Is that what you're asking?
basically. I mean, I don't like to think that it's either we go back to the old way or we stick with this way. I'd like to, look for opportunities for improvement in the modified plan. And I'm wondering, is your suggestion, say, that we stick with this blitz method, or are you looking to make some changes to it?
Right.
Mr. Mayor, yes, we're always looking to improve the way we do things and try to modify things as we find the mistakes that we make or find some people that are doing it just a little bit better than others. We've had, varying amounts of success, perhaps because of the different capabilities of operators, the machines they're using. The temperature on that day is huge. So if it's really warm out, as we've had the fluctuations in temperatures, things change quite a lot. So yes, to answer your question, we're always looking to improve it. We're always taking into consideration input from the public and from anyone who has any to try and change it. And that's what we would consider in order to create the new policy, should we do that.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Councillor Rice.
Several questions, if I may. The first one maybe to Mr. Galante. I'm kind of confused. We got an email modifying the recommendation from the time the agenda was printed yesterday. There was I thought I read a modified recommendation that basically we hold off doing anything for a few months, so we look at options. And I also thought I read that there would be hard copy given out. What I've got here is kind of useless. It's December's. Okay, thank you. So the recommendation that's before us is what?
Rossa, do you want to speak to and the public may have a question about that too, because the original report that went out. So maybe just speak to the difference in what was originally recommended and what administration is recommending today, just to clarify.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. We had a meeting with Community Living Department. We've been in touch with Transit as well. So there is a community mobility plan to be completed very soon. There will be a report coming to council in the next couple of weeks or so. So in conversations with Transit and other areas of community living, we decided that will be more prudent to hold further discussion during the spring and summer months to consider the whole community mobility plan and the impact on transit, because the buses had some challenges as well, maneuvering in between of wind roads and in different residential neighborhoods. So we need to take into consideration those aspects as well. That is the reason of this revised recommendation. Basically, to continue with the modified method for the next 2-3 months until the springtime, and then during the spring and summer months to perform a comprehensive review of the overall snow removal policy. During that time, we will take into account the sidewalk problem, how to deal with driveways, particular areas of town that we know, we have smaller lots with a high density of vehicles parked on the streets usually. So all those items will be taken into consideration during the spring and summer. And the goal is by the end of summer to come up with a revised snow removal policy to council, considering all those aspects.
Councillor Rice?
Okay, and I'm speaking totally in opposition to the recommendation. Brian goes, okay, I knew it. I believe that we have had record snowfalls. The average over 25 years is about 155 centimeters. So far to date, we've had 177. I think those numbers might be. So in a compressed period of time, I believe you do a blitz when you're dealing with near emergencies, which we were, and by your own admission, other than my street, of course, all the roads are good. So I don't think we need to continue the blitz now. We've caught up. That's what we needed to do was catch up, unless. And maybe we pass something that says unless there is so much more snow. I mean, we went through a period where every time you looked outside, you said, oh no, it's snowing again and again and again and again.
I'm sorry to break in. I have others in the queue that may want to ask questions for administration. We haven't started the debate yet.
Yes, so. All right. So I'm urging, and I would be prepared to make a motion that, that we look at this. I don't believe you make decisions at time of crisis. That's number one. Question 2 for Chris. And Chris, I understand that there might be a flaw in the Municipal Government Act. I'm sitting on a committee reviewing the Municipal Government Act, that it's not just so easy for the city to go in and say, okay, I'm towing that vehicle. It is so out of here that there could be huge financial ramifications for the city if we just go in and start towing bing, bang, boom.
Well, certainly there's a possibility of some liability related to damage of a vehicle, and we don't have the same protections under the municipal bylaws that we necessarily have under some provincial statutes related to abandoned vehicles and whatnot. So it's something that we certainly have to do more research on. And
okay, so there is it's not an easy fix. And one more, if I may, Brian, this may reflect my ignorance. I don't understand why the plow couldn't go down the street, just like the blitz thing. Then a backhoe come along and poof, poof, do the driveways. Is that too? So I don't see that one has to be tied to the other.
Speech.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Rice, the loaders do go down with the graders under the older method. We have usually at least 2 graders or 2 loaders for every grader in order for them to try and keep up. And I suppose it could be lagging behind, and we could get the roads done, but it just becomes a little bit. You get so far behind with driveways that people would think that you're not even doing them. The expectation has been that they have been cleared in time for me to go to work this morning as soon as the grader goes by. And it takes a long time for the loaders to catch up to the grader. The grader has to basically find something else to do sometimes, even to wait for the loaders to keep up. So it's the bottleneck.
Two very more quick things.
All right.
Who is monitoring the helpline? I've heard, if they're accurate, I've heard some horror stories of people calling and somebody going, yeah, well, sucks to be you, and that kind of thing. So who is monitoring the helpline? You know, I mean, I guess human nature is you only get yelled at so many times a day before you start to lose it. But so who's monitoring it, Brian, and what kind of training or what kind of support are we giving them?
Mr. Manuel?
Okay, so certainly. So I was tasked with starting up the snow helpline. So what we did was we set it up in the City on 99 building using some existing workspace that we had some capacity in. We brought in call takers from some call takers from enforcement services. We got call takers from transportation that regularly answer those lines, as well as some other customer service people from around the city. They're all centralized in a pod. There's a group of 3 to 4 of them working at a time, and there was always a manager, if not 2 managers, in near proximity to there. I know for the first stretch, myself, I was pretty much incorporated right into the pod, and I can say that based on the volume of calls that they had and the customer interactions they had, they did an outstanding job staying calm and composed. And I can say in all the calls that I have heard, there was not one which they took inappropriately. And I can say that there was times where people had made outright threats to both them, council members, and city staff operating graders, and that information we've had to pass on to the police and whatnot. So I'd say given the circumstances, they did an outstanding job.
That's all right.
Okay, and then finally, and I guess this would be for the end of the meeting, speaking to a grader operator the other day that works for private enterprise, it was quite amazing at the horror stories that people swearing at him and shaking their fist at him, trying to climb on the grader and throwing chunks of ice at the grader. Like, I mean, he was just horrified at the horror stories. I think one of the things that I would like at the end of this meeting is somehow for council to acknowledge. I know the guys were working like 12-hour shifts. Brian can correct me, but I believe that. I think ones work Christmas Day, New Year's Day. Like they've really did I guess, a yeoman's job, if that's a thing. And somehow I would like at the end of this meeting for those workers to know that council appreciates it.
Thanks, Councillor Rice. So when we set the new plan, the temporary plan in place, one of the considerations was staff. And so I don't know if anybody can speak to the efforts that we made over the course of this time to sort of support our staff that were delivering the service on the front end. Rossio, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely. HR provided a lot of support for the workers on site as well as on the call center. We were always there as well on Seating 99 supporting the call takers. They had a huge workload there, and of course the people on the street working 24/7. Not only for this particular blitz, but they have been doing this for the last almost 2 months. So HR prepared a plan supporting with food, with hot beverages, distributed on site on the different locations as well during this 3-week period, and that helped a lot with the workers. So.
Does administration have any plans or regular practice to recognize staff and contractors at the end of a snow season? Brian, is there anything that transportation does?
Mr. Mayor, in general, we just basically have an appreciation lunch, and we have a pep rally, I guess you'd call it, and they all know how they're all very, very dedicated, and they're all happy to do this, and so morale stays high when they see like that they're accomplishing something, and that's the main thing for them, and that's one of the offshoots of this program is they see that they're getting things done, and that people can get mobile. There's a few people that are fairly upset and act out a little. That's not the norm.
Councillor Rice, I think council shares your concern, and we certainly want to recognize the good work that staff have done to the completion of this. I see others in the queue. Councillor Tarant. There you go, it's on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, my apologies for being late. Ironically, I was stuck in a snow rut. So, but most of my questions have been answered, but just a few more here. With the new modified plan, has there been greater compliance with the parking bans?
Mr. Mandel?
Certainly, I would say there has been in relation to the residential snow removal program, because typically those are areas that snow bans are not in effect. And a big change that we see there is in the past, we've put out signs that indicate that we're going to come into a neighborhood and do residential snow removal, but for a number of factors and related to the time it takes to get through some of those neighborhoods, it was a number of days sometimes. So compliance kind of dwindles as the days go by. So when we were able to go forward and say, actually the first couple of days we actually fell victim to our own success a little bit, in that we got ahead and we notified the neighborhoods we were coming through, but we ended up getting through 3 times as many neighborhoods as we anticipated we were going to go through. So that kind of threw a little bit of a curveball at us, but we got a lot of compliance in that people were agreeable that if we know that you can get in here and you can get in here quick, we can be off the streets. And we had a lot of success that way. And I think that's actually what encouraged a lot of our, when we talk about the staff and the appreciation, the excitement we saw from both our enforcement folks and from the transportation folks that were saying, look, we've never seen it open up like this, where we're able to move through here as quickly as we are, and we're getting the progress. That was really beneficial. We do struggle still, though, with our priority 2 routes, which are the Windroad routes typically. And we do acknowledge that there's a lot of windrows right now because of the amount of snow. And we do have a number of challenges sometimes with transit buses, city buses, and either wider vehicles. When you have a vehicle that's parked alongside a windrow, if there's not enough room to pass, it's an illegally parked vehicle. And we're continually responding to complaints about that right now, but we certainly are trying to work with the public to find alternative places for them to be.
Councillor Tarant?
Thank you. Next one is in regards to the plowing out of the driveways. So I understand, in the future we're going to be developing a policy to see, who does it and how we go about it. But for right now, for the next, couple months, are we just going to continue with the hotline? And could you just explain a little bit more how exactly that process works?
Mr. Mayor, if council approves, we would propose to continue doing it the way we're doing it now, with the small windrows, and further test it, get further costs on it, see what falls out of it, how much more reaction there is to it. Try and fine tune the request for driveways to be opened. Maybe put flags up in the ones that we know from the last time, so that we can do them on the way through, and continue to do it the same way as we have been. Probably not with quite as much equipment, probably on a rotation of like I said, 2 weeks or a little more, to try and anticipate what it would be like if we started this at the beginning of the year and kept up with it.
Yes, thank you. Could you also explain just how, so when a call comes in, do you sort of compile a list and then you send it out after a few hours, or, does it just sort of one-off? How does that work?
The call center, Mr. Mayor, has been sending us the list, updating it each hour while they're open. And Dan has been vetting that list and organizing it for the lead hands and supervisors, the loader operators, et cetera, to go and have that done. They come in during the day while we're in that subdivision, while the loaders are still there. So it makes it easy to go back, and we've been able to either put another loader on it during our afternoon shift to catch up, or to do it right away. So.
And if there's an urgency, we certainly will go outside that hour period. If something needs to be rectified immediately, we contact transportation. And for the most part, that hasn't been the case. And as Brian had indicated, we have had very few people that have had to wait any significant period of time to be assisted.
Okay. Is it our policy to try avoiding plowing in school zones when, like in the morning or after school? Is that?
Yes, absolutely it is. We try to stay away from them as much as we can, and we try as much as it may not look like it, to do those on days when school's not in. This last go around, we haven't been able to keep up with that. The windrows are just so big. We've had so many fires to put out in order to do that. But schools are a priority, and we do definitely try to stay away while the children are on the street. Absolutely.
And, yeah, and just one final question. So there's a lot of people in town that are wanting to, help other people and take their own bobcats. And, I know as a city we can't, openly endorse that with, because of liability. But I'm just wondering if there's any, possible solutions that we'd be able to do. With our private contractors, I know they take a course, right, at the beginning of the year. Is there any chance that we can maybe allow private citizens that want to volunteer to take the course so they're aware of our snow policies and kind of mitigate liability that way? Or has that been looked at all?
Mr. Mayor, we haven't done that. That's an idea that we would definitely look at, and we can use all the help we can get if we can find a way to make that viable and not cause damage and all that liability stuff that does come along with it. Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Councillor Tarrant, anything else?
Thank you. That's good.
Okay. I can see so a few people in the queue. Councillor O'Toole is the next up that hasn't asked a question. I see a few that have. We should be getting around to the time where we're making a motion and voting on it and dealing with it one way or another. Because I think we've had probably, everybody after Councillor O'Toole has had an opportunity. Councillor Logan hasn't taken one yet. To ask administration questions, but that's ideally what we should be doing now, and then getting to a motion where we're discussing and debating a course of action. So, Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'd like to say thank you very much to the staff that's been working night and day. Get that off my shoulders, because I think that they've been working and doing a great job. My concern is the amount of snow that's left on the street. Can you give me an idea on how much snow that you estimate would be left on the street right now in windrows and snow piles?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I did a rough calculation based on the general size of the windrows and the length of them and the 500 some odd piles of snow in cul-de-sacs if we picked all that up. That doesn't include snowbanks along the side of the main arterials that are there. There's approximately 30,000 truckloads, give or take, and that's, again, just a seat of my pants windshield estimate.
Okay. And just a couple more here. Do we plan on, or is there an expectation to move all that snow, or are we going to hope that Mother Nature looks after that for us?
Generally,
I'm kind of a mean person so far this year.
Generally, Mr. Mayor, we've tried to pick all that stuff, and we'll continue to do that. And if the snow goes away from falling for a long enough period of time, we'll catch up with it. I don't hold out a lot of hope for some of the piles in the cul-de-sacs because there's just a lot of snow to move this year. And I don't anticipate that it's not going to snow again either. So the windrows will be back. So it would be nice, but it just becomes impassable. They're so large, those windrows in the center of the road, and takes so long to melt in the spring. It impedes cleanup and whatnot, so we do need to pick them up.
Okay, and just the last question here. How do you feel that in the springtime that we're going to deal with the drainage water issues?
It's the same every spring. No matter how we do this, we block catch basins, and we have to go around. We have a program where crews go around with water trucks and backhoes and loaders, etc., and clean the catch basins and thaw them out, pour hot water and wash them down so that the water will get into them. And I don't anticipate it being a lot different with this method. It'll still be required that we clean the catch basins off and thaw out the outfalls, etc.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Toole. So we are getting into second round here, and we do need a motion to move this forward, and then we can discuss and debate around a motion. I see Councillor McLean next in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question before we start voting on motions. Just a quick question. Over the years, and I'm not a fan of small lots, and talk about sump issues. Every one of them got a sump and pouring on the water and building ice in the wintertime and everything. With this updated, modified schedule, do you find yourself, Brian, you guys be able to get to the back alleys now finally? Like when you got a 30-foot small lot, most people are parking on the main road and make it one lane, and it's really, really tight like sardines. Do you find you're able to get into the back alley so they can get off of that road possibly?
Sweet.
Mayor, yes, that has been one of the offshoots of this, because we have some time now and we can get through the subdivisions this quickly to make them more passable, that we've always said that we need to clean those lanes. That is true for the priority 2 roads as well, so that people have a place to park off the road. So yes, while we've been going through this time, we've been going down the paved lanes especially and trying to clear those out in the same manner as we're doing the front streets, in order to allow people to park in the back.
I just want to finish up, Mayor. The reason why I'm asking this council and previous have voted on, let's have people live in the back of the alleys as well, in different areas for rebuilding. And so with this modified area, we could actually maybe keep up in the back alleys with the new developments that's been passed.
Thanks, Councillor McLean. Councillor Rice, I see you're next in the queue, but I'm going to skip to Councillor Logan because he hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet. Councillor Logan? Should come on for you there. There you go.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I shouldn't speak yet, but what I wanted to do was actually put the motion on the table. That is the recommendation, so I'd be willing to wait if that's...
Sure, Councillor Logan. I think we're probably all about ready to get to that and discussing where we fall on the issue, so that'd be...
Then I'll move the recommendation.
Well, I want to ask one question first before we do it.
You can ask at any time. You don't need to get ahead
Well, Councillor Rice was ahead of you. I actually asked her to wait, but Councillor Logan, make your motion. There's still an opportunity for questions in the discussion and debate period. So, Councillor Logan.
Thank you. I would move that council adopt the modified blitz method of residential snow cleaning and so on in the report that's in front of us. And just a quick word, I want to praise as highly as I can the city forces. I think they've done a fantastic job. My own feedback has been, there's always a few people with tempers, but has been that the weight is from the public is appreciation for the job that they've done. And I think that they've done an excellent job in conditions that are unprecedented in Grand Prairie's history.
Thanks. And Councillor Logan, just to clarify, given that there were the 2 reports, your intent is for the balance of this season with the review at the conclusion of the season? Just to clarify, because the 2 recommendations are different. Thanks very much. Okay, so Councillor Rice. You have to turn on your microphone.
There's mountains of snow every place. It occurs to me I haven't seen a fire hydrant in a long time. What's happening with fire hydrants?
Mr. Veach.
Mayor Given, we have instructed all the loader operators to clear out in front of the fire hydrants. And I have checked, and they have been doing that. They're not always readily apparent, and the residents do have to assist us in that. But if we put a windrow in front of it, we are cleaning them out.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tarrant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak in favor of the modified snow plan, continuing it for the rest of the season. I believe that residents are happy having their streets cleared multiple times, and I think that's of greater value than having to deal with the windrows. So I think people are majority of people I've talked to are in support of this, and I certainly think this has been a long time coming, and I think it's the direction we should move in.
Councillor Tarrant. Councillor Rice.
Being against the motion, I believe the blitz was necessary. I believe the crisis is past. I believe we are a winter city and we have an obligation to provide a level of service reflective of a standard of living that we're proud of. And I don't think we need to continue the blitz because I believe we have caught up now.
Thanks, Councillor Rice. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I agree with Councillor Tarrant that I will be in favor of this modified plan. I go back to when I first ran in 2004. I wanted some changes. I believe sometimes change is hard, and this is an outdated policy, and I'm looking forward to the change.
Thanks, Councillor McLean. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Councillor Radburn, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So I'm not sure as I'm right here. For me, the initial recommendation that we change forever was a non-starter for me. This is possibly useful. It will be dependent upon what we can learn in the next few months, right? So that's what I'm wrestling with. What are we going to learn from this? Because Councillor Rice's comment earlier are both valid. One in the sense that maybe we don't need this anymore, but the other is let's maybe look at learning when things are more normal. So there's some advantage of that as well. So for me, that's what I'm wrestling with. I think I'm interested in what other councillors have to say about the motion. But for me, it's not about this is the way it's going to be forever. This is do we want to take this opportunity to learn more for the rest of this winter? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Radburn. Councillor Clayton.
Sorry, a question and then a comment. If the snowfall did not continue at the levels that it's continuing and we were in the proposed modified plan, would the sidewalks and the driveways be cleared?
Mr. Beach?
Not under the proposal that we have put forward. We would continue to do it in the same method that we're doing it. And if we continued it, we'd be able to get it down to the pavement, small windrows would be put on people's driveways. So that's what we would propose, yes.
Councillor Clayton?
Based on that information, I would speak in opposition to the motion. I think that the plan was good for an emergency situation. It's great to reduce expenses in snow removal. However, I feel this plan needs modification, and I would like administration to come back with a plan based on measurements of snowfall. And in the case that there isn't a lot more snow, there are some opportunities for us to pick up some of the things that haven't been done during the modification plan.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Logan?
Thank you. I would urge the council support this motion. We did have a winter of record snowfall already. Regardless of whether we get more snowfall or not, there's an incredible backlog out there, and we still have to deal with that. So now is not the time when we've got a little bit of success happening with how we're doing it to jump off the horse and say, okay, we'll go back to some sort of system that proved it couldn't handle the loads earlier this winter. So I would urge council to support this motion to deal with the immediate problem, and then administration can be dealing with coming up with a new snow policy or reviewing the existing snow policies, both the one that we were using and the modified one for the next year. But come on, let's finish the job. These guys are doing a tremendous job. Give them the chance to finish it.
Councillor Logan. Councillor O'Toole?
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'm kind of feeling the same as Councillor Radburn. I'm not really sure exactly how to go forward, but I did vote for the modified system to go through because it was an emergency situation and we were to deal with it today. And who knows what's going to happen for the rest of the winter. Winter's just started. I would like to see in future, this winter, that if we do have another massive dump of snow, that we continue with the emergency plan that we established. But as we have a break in snowfall, I would like to possibly go back to the old system of making the roads the old way. And I'm still on the fence here, but if we were to vote right now, I would probably go along with Councillor Rice's motion.
Sure. Councillor Rice doesn't have a motion, but
well,
she's in opposition. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm sort of on the fence here myself, too. I'd like to thank Council for asking a bunch of really important questions. I think you stole all mine, which is great, because it's great to listen to all the answers. I'd also like to thank our city crews for working so hard, and our residents for being so patient and hardworking when needed be. Speaking as just a point of observation and I guess actually being in there and removing some of these windrows, To a certain degree, I agree with Councillor Rice where we're at a point of emergency. That concerns me because after our emergency, what we were dealing with weren't 18-inch windrows. We were dealing with 4-foot tall windrows of thick, solid ice. And I know a lot of our residents were forced to clear those out. I know Councillor Tarant, myself, were clearing some of those out, and it was hard and laborious work. So I would hate to let an emergency situation build up to the point where we force our citizens to experience that once again, because it is an arduous task to remove all of that. In regards to perhaps adopting this, I believe that if we were to be able to keep up with it throughout the course of the year, I don't think walkability would become an issue as much as it has been with these incredible windrows that we have piled up on the streets, and thus making it easier for our residents to take care of their snow, as well as for driveways to remain clear. And my observation is, I know that we have gone forward with this modified residential snow clearing procedure, but I live in a neighborhood where even though we've been on this modified procedure, my driveway and my sidewalks have been cleared, and perhaps that's because I live across the street from a school, but I have also driven past several other neighborhoods in town who have also had the same service given to them. So I guess I'm assuming that it's a priority too, because we're on the school road, but there's some streets in the city that I've driven past that I didn't believe were a priority too. So maybe Brian, you could answer for me as to where do we determine, is it just the priority twos, or is it different streets as well? Is it bus routes? Where are we making walkability more accessible for our public?
Mr. Veach?
Mr. Mayor, it's hard to exactly say until I see exactly what you're talking about, but what the instructions were to the grader operators was if there was a side yard where the snow could go all one way and there was no sidewalk on that side, we pushed it to that side. If there was room to put it in the park, we put it in the park. And so all of those are priority 3 roads in most cases, and that's how we did it. We tried to minimize the number of driveways that we did actually, or sidewalks that we did actually fill with snow. There may have been the off chance where there was an opportunity to push it behind the sidewalk. I'm not sure. There are various scenarios that could come up, but the instruction was to minimize the amount of havoc behind them by moving the snow to a place where it was going to be out of people's way completely in the first time we did it. So perhaps that's what you've seen. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you so much. I guess with that, I'm just going to put in my own comment. I've been following the weather for well over a decade now, and one thing that I know is that the earth, she is changing, and our annual snowfall, in fact, has been increasing over the past 4 years steadily up and down, but averaging around close to the 2-meter range for annual snowfalls. And in the past 3 years, that has been increasing, and so with that, taking that in mind, I would probably be in favor of this vote to recommend that we continue with the modified blitz so that we can continue to keep up with our snowfall before we get behind.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. So I haven't had an opportunity to get in on the motion that's on the floor. I'm speaking in support. I believe our job at council is to keep an open mind and look for opportunities to learn and improve service. I believe the best way, certainly we can do that, and administration had come in the past and recommended this level of service, and I think probably 2 years ago. At that time, I voted against it because I believe Grand Prairie residents were accustomed to the standard that the City of Grand Prairie had set with doing driveway clearing. But having said that, now that we're into this, I believe we have an opportunity to learn firsthand what the challenges are with this system, how it might work in Grand Prairie, and what the benefits might be. And I believe it could lead, to the first time in my time on council where we have a substantive improvement in the way we do snow clearing. In the past, the only other option that's been available to us has been to throw more money at it. And I believe, as we saw with the sort of high point of the challenge that we had before Christmas, wasn't for lack of money that we were running into problems. It was really, from my understanding, lack of operators, fact that there's only 24 hours a day and you can only run people for so long. And that says to me, no matter how many times council says, let's just put more money into it, I think will ultimately lead to failure or will not get us the desired result. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity to take the next 4 months or however long, 5 months or 3 months,
3 months.
Mother Nature and God willing, but however long the spring lasts to actually learn firsthand what the challenges are with the system, what the benefits are, and then to review that and say, okay, does this make sense? And I do that so that in the hopes that it may lead to an actual substantive improvement on a regular and ongoing basis for residents. Ideally, you know, it would, if we could get to a situation where everybody knew that the second Thursday of the month was their day that the graders were coming through their street, wouldn't that be something? You know, I understand from staff that that may be possible in this type of system, and I'd like to explore that. So for that reason, I'm willing to go with this for the balance of the season, review at the end of the season, and then make an informed decision about whether it was something that we continue. I would encourage council to support this rather than cutting it off at this point before we have all the information to be able to make an informed decision. I see Councillor McLean in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm just going to piggyback on Councillor Thiessen about changing in weather, and I've been in Grand Prairie since the early 90s, and down east the snow is wet. Maybe a question for Brian River. I find our snow is wet now, not dry and easy to shovel. Where humidity seems to be changing, and but that's what I'm finding the last few years. The snow's getting heavier, and like down east where it's wet. No, I think there's a change, and I think Councillor Thiessen's right. Could you answer that, maybe, Brian, or have you noticed?
Although you're not a meteorologist,
no,
I don't know.
My observation, Mr. Mayor, is that it's been the first few years I was here. I've been only 10 years here, but first few years we didn't have the freeze-thaw cycles that we've been having, and that's what's caused us the most problems in the last few years especially. And you're absolutely right. Out of the last 25 years, we've had 6 years with over 200 centimeters, and the last 3 years have been over 200 centimeters. So the trend has been for more Pacific systems to come in. And I've taken the check on the humidity fairly regularly this winter, and it has been in the 80% range, which seems to be fairly high from what I've noticed in past years.
Thank you.
Just on that, I'd like to note that the City of Grand Prairie last term did pass a climate change adaptation policy, and I think that this is one of the items that should come under that policy. Under many scenarios of climate change, weather cycles will happen more quickly and will be more extreme, and I think that could be the type of impact that we're seeing. Of course, a 4-year or even 10-year sample is probably not enough to make an informed decision or prediction, but there's a reason why we have that policy. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I just want to be clear on the motion. If the motion is passed, we will leave sidewalks covered, the sidewalks that are covered now, completely covered for the rest of the winter season.
Mr. Beach.
Given the amount of snowfall that we've had so far, we were in a big hurry to get through, yes. I'm not going to say that in every case, if we had the time, we'd love to clean them off and find something else to do with that snow. If we can push it behind, perhaps we could do that, but I can't promise one way or the other. It depends on what we face each day.
Councillor Clayton, it sounds like as close answers are going to get.
Yep.
Is there anybody else that would, we've, I think, had just about a round. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to the motion before we vote? One last opportunity. I think everybody's had a chance. And I just want to note there are some members of the public that are here in attendance today to hear the discussion. Council members have been receiving, I see some chuckles, have been receiving feedback from residents, both positive and negative, that have highlighted the challenges and some of the benefits. And so I just want to acknowledge the fact that council, as always, is accepting phone calls, is in some cases making personal visits, but certainly is reading all the information and opinions that are sent our way. So I think each council member has reflected those opinions and concerns that they've heard at the table, and that's probably what they're basing their decisions on. So last opportunity here before we see two that are going to take advantage of that, Councillor O'Toole and then Councillor Thiessen.
Just hoping that, thanks, Mayor Given. Could you just repeat the motion that's been...
Sure. With Councillor Logan's concurrence, I'll just repeat the recommendation. The that council adopt the modified blitz method of residential snow clearing until the snow melt is completed, and direct administration perform a comprehensive review of the snow removal policy prior to the winter of 2014-2015.
Thank you.
Councillor Thiessen?
All right, I shut it on and off. There you go. Just a couple questions, and then I guess we can get to the vote. I want to make sure that we ask all the questions that Councillor Clayton has been asking and clarify here. Horacio, you and I had spoke before we had administered this emergency snow removal procedure, and you had spoken to me, and I said, "Where's our reserves at?" And like, "Are we getting close?" And you said, "Oh, we're going into reserves right now." What is our reserve budget currently sitting at right now for snow removal? If that's possible.
Safety?
I don't have the latest numbers right now here in front of me. I don't know if somebody from finance can speak about that.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you. We do have a significant operational surplus this year, and that's what we're drawing from at this point. We don't intend to use reserves unless it becomes a real issue, but we believe we can absorb it in the operational surplus.
Okay, and then my question then is for Brian. Just if we do have significant amounts of reserve funds available to us in regards to community mobility, is it possible that we can privately contract out people or companies to clear the sidewalks and driveways on behalf of the City of Grand Prairie while we continue to keep up with the snow removal currently?
Mr. Peach?
That's a difficult question because you have to manage that. And if you have enough of that equipment out there to do the job you're talking about, it's just like an anthill. It can get out of control in no time flat, and you don't know what's happening, where you don't have any handle on how many hours people are working, where they're working, what's done, what's not done. And it just becomes unmanageable. So we've tried to always maintain a level of equipment that's hired, first of all, what we can get, and also what we can manage.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Clayton.
I just once again want to say that I think that the modified snow plan was great for the emergency situation. I think that there are opportunities to take advantage of the positive aspects of this snow removal as we look into the 2014 and 15 season. My concern is if we stick with this modified snow plan for the rest of the snow season, there will be safety issues in regards to sidewalks, and I would be more comfortable if we were looking at a revision to some of the modified plan.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Logan.
Speak to end the debate if everybody's had their shot at it.
I think everybody's had a reasonable opportunity, so Councillor Logan, go ahead, you can close.
I think that the administration did a superb job in bringing forward the modified blitz method to deal with the situation that we had. I think that administration, and I trust that administration, if they see that suddenly the sun is out and the snow is melting or some other things are happening, they will come back to us and say, we don't need this plan anymore. But from our vantage point right now, this is what makes sense.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Logan. So again, we've had an opportunity for everybody, I think, to go around. So this time we'll call for the vote on the motion that would adopt the modified method for the balance of this season. And then administration would bring forward a review prior to the 2014-2015 season. The council would be able to discuss, review, and the public would be able to view at that time as well. So I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. I believe that was the only item of business for our agenda today. Councillor Rice?
As a result of that motion passing, I'm really happy to see Mr. Johnson, Aquaterra Solid Waste Manager here. Mr. Galante is going to be preparing a report on snow clearing options. New York City outfits their garbage trucks with grader blades, so that every street in New York City is plowed once a week. And I wonder if that might be something worth taking a look at.
Yeah, sounds like we've just referred it, and now administration's heard that, and I'll have an opportunity to comment on it. Councillor Logan.
Similarly to what Alderman Rice's comment was. I'd like to comment on the amount of immediate work that was being done by private businesses and I assume private contractors on parking lots, sometimes huge parking lots in the city. And both my family and myself were astounded that the priorities for getting a commercial parking lot were way ahead of access for people that were snowbound in the community. So I'm just wondering if that issue could be at least thought about in the review that's upcoming, because there was other equipment and manpower that could have been on the road.
Thanks, Councillor Logan. Okay, so I believe that concludes our business for today's meeting. We'll adjourn, and I believe our next regular council committee cycle starts next week. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks very much, administration. Thank you.